Hi there, Paul Kirtley here, and today I wanted to take you on a little journey back in time and share something with you about my first bushcraft knife. Now, I'm sure you probably all remember your own bushcraft knife, the first one you had, or maybe that's even the one you still use. Let me know in the comments below what your first bushcraft knife was, but I want to tell you about mine. Now, I had various large outdoor knives, the survival knives that were really prominent in the 1980s, and we all know where that influence came from, and I'd had those sorts of knives. And then I was starting to learn about bushcraft rather than survival, so this is in the 90s, okay, and I got this book. I've got them in a polythene bag because it's raining on and off today. I've just stopped, threw a couple of things in my rucksack today. I'm out for a hike and I thought if I get the opportunity, if there's a break in the weather, I can stop and make this video. So here I am. I got this book, the Outdoor Survival Handbook by Mears, and this is actually the first version of this book that I got, and this is the US version of the Outdoor Survival Handbook. And later on I got this one with Ray on the front, Mears. It's exactly the same book. But in this book, and you can see it's well used, well thumbed, in this book, early on, at the front, is a little bit on cutting tools. And here he talks about the specification of a knife. Now, at this point, I didn't know anything about Mora knives. I'd never seen a woodlaw knife before. This is the first time I'd seen anything that looked like a woodlaw knife in this book here. And this book was published in 1992. And so I looked at that specification. I was like, I don't have anything like that. I have these big, cheap, sort of Rambo knife knockoffs. I'm going to have to go down to my local store and see if I can find something like that to do some of the things in this book and learn the way that Mr. Raymond Mears is showing in this book. And so there was a gun store, a shooting and fishing store in the local town, small town, and I bought some knives from there when I was a teenager, and at this point I was in my 20s. I went down to that local gun store and I said, I'm looking for a knife this kind of size, this kind of fixed bladed knife, sheath knife, certain thickness, certain size, the way that Mears described it in the book. And so he opened the cabinet and I looked through, and this is what I found. This was the closest thing I could find in the local store. There were no Moras, nothing like a bushcraft knife. Remember, this is like the 1990s, okay? And I'm sure if I'd gone to Sweden or some other spots, I could have probably picked up a Mora knife, but at that point they were not ubiquitous like they are. And this is the closest thing I could find. And this is, I don't know if you can see that, made by Normark, and it's a leather sheath. It's not, I don't think it's a full grain sheath, it's quite thin, it's relatively cheap leather. There's a little plastic insert in the sheath though, which makes it quite solid. It's well stitched, it's got a couple of brass rivets, and this is the knife. Okay, so it's not too dissimilar, I guess, to what a lot of you might use for bushcraft in terms of the handle size, you know, making a fist around there. It's got a comfy grip, it's got a rubberized grip. The blade is about palm width, which is what I was looking for, and I later found that that was, for example, what Mors had been recommending for years, but I hadn't discovered Mors's recommendations on knives at that point. So I found this. There's a couple of little brass bits there. I don't know what the tang does in that handle. I suspect it only goes so far. It's certainly not full width because it's got a rubber handle all the way around, a bit like the Moras do. And etched on there, again, I don't know if you can see, it's probably not focusing, but it says Normark stainless steel, Finland. So it's a stainless blade, it's not a carbon steel blade. I couldn't find a carbon steel blade in that shop. It's got a bit of a belly on it there as well, which, you know, the point shape isn't quite what I was looking for, but it does have a flat bevel, does have a Scandi grind, and that was the closest I could find, and it wasn't too expensive either. So that was my first bushcraft knife. Now the stainless steel's a bit springy. You might even be able to see that I can flex it a bit there. It's a bit springy. I never managed to sharpen it super well, but that said, I haven't tried to sharpen this recently, and I think maybe in another video I might try and get this as sharp as I can and see if I can see how I can use it now, because I moved on from this knife not that long after I got this. My progression through the bushcraft skills and learning was quite rapid at that point, but I did use this knife for quite a while. I did learn to sharpen, I did use it. I found it had a little bit too much belly. It doesn't work with a fire steel or a ferro rod on the back. I guess I could have filed it, but this was my first bushcraft knife. And it's a good little knife. I like it, and I like the sheath. It all fits together very well. Scandinavian knife, and that was my first proper bushcraft knife. Yeah, love to know what yours was. And incidentally and interestingly, relatively recently I tried a modern bushcraft knife that wasn't dissimilar to this in many respects, and if you want to learn more about that, that was a Mora Garberg. You can check out the linked video to find out how I used that knife, what I thought about that knife, and some of that thinking is based on going right back to this stainless knife that was the closest thing I could find to what was being recommended as a bushcraft knife back in the 90s. And that's that, short and sweet. Take care, enjoy the outdoors, and I'll see you on another video before too long, and check out that linked video about the Garberg.